What is up, everybody? I am Jamie Shaw. I'm here from the Absolute Basketball Company. And here we are, ABC Live, coming at you here midday. It is about 2:45-ish here on Tuesday. Wanted to come in here and just go over some stuff. Want to talk. Want to open the floor throughout the entire thing for questions. Please go ahead and leave them in the chat to the side. I'll get to whatever I can. As I get there, start off, we got a great show for you here today with a lot of really good topics. We're going to start off with some Hubert Davis talk going to UNC. We're going to go into Charles Bediako and Trevor Keels, both committing Alabama, Duke respectively, go into what they bring to their class, what they bring as players, and all that. Head over to Jalen Cone to Northern Arizona. Very interesting commitment there. Very excited to jump in there. And then we're going to end up with Baylor versus Gonzaga, go into what happened last night, go into the draft stocks of some players, all of that type of stuff. So it's going to be a real quick run through here. We'll start off with Hubert Davis to UNC. This was any time that a big national brand, a big national company changes at the top, there's going to be tons of speculation around. And for the most part, unless that you are getting information directly from the source, a lot of it is hearsay. There was a ton of hearsay going on with this hire. Everybody talking about Hubert Davis. Everybody talking about Wes Miller. Those two were both very much involved. Hubert Davis was very much involved from the get-go. But then you also have the additions. Mark Few. You had the mix. You had Brad Stevens being talked about. You had Nate Oates coming into play. You had tons of people that were getting talked about within the whole thing. But at the end of the day, UNC went with Hubert Davis. This should not come as a surprise to you. Although it did as me, I was pegging Wes Miller, but they went with Hubert Davis. This should not come as a surprise. I mean, the last time when Dean Smith, the last legend that they had, retired, they went with Bill Guthridge. Bill Guthridge, never been a head coach before, a longtime assistant, older person, more longer in the tooth, I guess you would say. Hubert Davis, a lot of the same type of characteristics. Older, never been a head coach before. It comes from the UNC family, et cetera, et cetera. This hire should not come as necessarily a surprise because this is what UNC has done in the past. The only other time that they've had to replace a legend when Dean Smith retired, they went Bill Guthridge. This time, another legend, Roy Williams, retires. They replace him. Hubert Davis checks a lot of the exact same boxes that they had there. Going into, I guess, a little bit about what Hubert is, Hubert's bringing continuity to the program, just like Bill Guthridge did. Bill Guthridge was an assistant on staff. Hubert keeps a lot of the players, keeps a lot of the continuity there. He understands the family aspect of what UNC brings to the table. In his opening press conference that he had today, he talked about wanting to link together people on staff, bringing people on staff who are from the Carolina family, but he wants to bring them from different generations of the family. He wants to bring them from the Smith era, from the Guthridge era, from the Williams era. You know, he wants to bring different eras of UNC basketball, of the family together, and let that be kind of the staff that he puts on. Here at UNC, there's a very proud tradition, a very proud heritage that they have there for UNC basketball. And Hubert Davis is going to see that forward, continue seeing that move forward, as he talked about in his opening press conference today. But this hire makes sense. Again, you know, they have a roster full of players. Obviously, Walker Kessler's already said he's going to leave. Also, Sterling Manley has announced that he's going to leave. But, you know, they have commitments with DeMarco Dunn, Dontrez Styles. I don't think they were ever in jeopardy of leaving anyway. But, you know, you have two top 100 guys who are committed to the program as it is. You also have the previous guys. You have R.J. Davis. You have Caleb Love. You have Kerwin Walton. You have Armando Bacot. These guys who haven't necessarily said one way or the other if they're leaving or staying or whatnot. I think Caleb Love said that he's going to stay, but everybody else, you know, up in the air. Well, there's familiarity and continuity with Hubert Davis coming in here. Makes sense. Keep the roster kind of intact. Keep the family happy. Bring in family. Understand the tradition of UNC basketball. Keep the commits happy. And then trudge forward. Move forward with an understanding as to what it was that they were, who they already had inroads with on the recruiting trail and everything. So it'll be very interesting to see the staff that he does bring together. As he said, he wants to bring in different eras of the UNC family, the Smith era, the Guthridge era, the Williams era, et cetera, bring all of them together on staff, and we'll see what happens. We'll see how it goes. At the end of the day, Hubert Davis has not been a head coach before. I believe he was the JV coach, and he played in the NBA. He was an NBA analyst, then bring him back for the last 10 years on the UNC staff. So The hires will be interesting, but it makes sense them bringing in Hubert Davis in this scenario. Moving on, a couple commitments that we had in the last week. Trevor Keels, Paul the Sixth. He's I think we have him number 19 at Rivals, committed to Duke. This really comes as no surprise. For the longest time, this commitment was down to Duke and Villanova. Now it did ebb and flow with his commitment. They had Duke was the longtime head of the class, and then there was a little scuttle there for about a month or so a few weeks ago about Villanova jumping to the head, and then back at it. He ended up going to Duke, which was kind of as it was seen all along the way. What is Trevor Keels as a player? Well, he's a high quality role guy. He fits into a lot of situations, standing about 6'4", 6'5". He's got a thick-bodied frame, and he's able to do a lot of things on the offensive end of the floor, as well as play some good press defense. He can handle shoot and pass. He can play both wing positions. He can initiate some offense some. He can close down the offense some with scoring. He can shoot a little bit. He can attack the basket. He can do a lot of things on the floor. Kind of a very Wendell Moore-like guy in how he plays. Just a very Swiss Army knife type of guy, and that he get into a lot of different roles while not necessarily excelling in one specific thing. But he'll be able to get on the floor by his ability to do a lot of stuff on the floor at a high level. He can also defend. He can rebound. He'll stick his nose in and do some of the dirty work and all that. Very, very good complementary piece to what this class is already bringing in. You have the arguably number one, if not number one, number two player in the country with Paolo Banchero, 6'10", do it all forward. You also have a top 10, AJ Griffin coming in. I believe we might have him number 7 or between 6 and 8 on the Rivals 150. AJ Griffin coming in 6'6". He's a wing. He's a shooter. He can score the ball and do all that. Paolo Banchero steps right in. Still, the question remains moving forward with Duke. What's the point guard spot going to look like? They lose Goldwire, and you have DJ Stewart, who has committed to go to the NBA as well. So what are they going to do at the point guard position? Still kind of going to be the question at Duke. However, you bring in this class, and the third best player, Trevor Keels, here in this class is a top 20 player in the country who can do a ton of different things, who very much complements the alpha scoring of Griffin and just the alpha dominance of what Paolo Banchero brings to the table. Now, Charles Bediako, Rivals 150, number 29 in the country. He chose Alabama. He was a long time said to go to Alabama. I believe most of the future cast that we had on Rivals.com had Charles Bediako going to Alabama for months now. It's kind of one of those things. You get down at IMG. IMG is almost like a Disneyland of a beautiful place. You get enamored with it, and you get caught up in the day-to-day of walking around. You have only athletes on there. Everybody's getting better and improving. The facilities that they have there are unbelievable. The classrooms and the teachings and all that type of stuff there. And you kind of just lose track of time, reality, whatnot, and all that. It wasn't that he was wavering or teetering or anything like that. It's just that, you just lose track of time when you're down there at IMG with all the great stuff going on. Charles Bediako commits to IMG. He joins Juswan Holt and J.D. Davidson in that 3-man class that Nate Oates is bringing in. Nate Oates will probably be a consensus. Alabama next year will probably be a consensus top 5 to 10 team in the country. He might even get some number one nods from the guys that really like to go out there and make a splash with their rankings and get a lot of clicks. But, those will be deserved type of talk that Alabama will have with what Nate Oates did this year, what they bring back. And this class they have coming in, J.D. Davidson, he's a top 1 or 2 point guard in the country. Charles Bediako is a top 5 center in the country. Juswan Holt can really score the basketball. He's kind of underrated right now. He's a Rivals 150 player, but he's kind of in the back end of the 100, possibly teetering into the a little bit over 100 right now. 6'5", he's got bounce. He can score off the bounce. If this Final Four showed us anything that we have right now, it's that ISO players can be a huge success in basketball. Look at what UCLA did with their guys. Look at what Baylor did with their guys. If you have a team full of guys who can play ISO basketball at an efficient level, then you could do a lot of things. And college basketball. And Juice Holt kind of falls within that. You also have J.D. Davidson, who is one of the highest athletic guards, point guards especially, that we've had come through the high school ranks in a while. Just uber explosive guy, plays above the rim, plays downhill fast, all that type of stuff too. So joining Charles Bediako, who's a rim protector, he's a rebounder. They keep that Canadian pipeline going. Keon Ambrose, Josh Primo, et cetera, et cetera. With Bediako coming in to Alabama, able to protect the rim, able to rebound the basketball, using his length. What he really did this year at IMG was he really brought together his toughness and his competitive nature. Super nice kid. Every time I see him, he speaks, "How you doing? How you been? Good to see you. It's been a while," all that type of stuff. Super nice kid. But the switch kind of turned this year at IMG. He's dunking on kids and staring at them. He's going to, flexing on people and really, throwing block shots into the second row and stuff. He got some nasty to him this year while at IMG, and that's going to serve him good in the long run with who he is, what he does, and all that type of stuff. And I'm sure the Alabama fans will love that. Standing 6'11" the length and all that type of stuff too. He will pay a great compliment because, again, if we saw anything from this NCAA tournament with what Baylor has, they have ISO players at the guard positions, and they have rebounders and shot blockers at the bigs, and they have guys that buy into their roles with that. Bediako will buy into that role supremely of playing in the dunker spot, of being able to score when his number is called, which may not be very often throughout the course of a game, and a lot of his points may come off of him having to go get the ball, but he will buy into that role supremely in a Flo Tamba type of manner like Baylor had. So good class. Kudos to both of those guys. That's kind of what they're going to bring to the table. And then also today, I'm based out of North Carolina. Jalen Cone, a decommitment. He's from went to Walkertown High School, 336 area of North Carolina, committed to Northern Arizona after he decommitted. Or not, he didn't decommit. He transferred after his sophomore year at Virginia Tech. For his career at Virginia Tech, 18.9 minutes, 8.4 points, 41.1% shooting from three for the 5'10" guard. I am all for this. Now, I don't want to sit here. I know Jalen Cone personally. I know his family, all that type of stuff. I don't want to sit here and profess that I know any inner workings as to what happened. There could be a whole bunch of factors that went into his commitment, but exactly from an outside perspective looking in, not knowing any of the inner workings as to what went into the recruitment and stuff, I love this commitment for him. It's kind of one of those things where he saw at the high major level that he was a very valuable role player. He came in, he served his purpose, knocked down threes. He was one of the premier three-point shooters. I mean, for 2 seasons for an NCAA tournament team, 41.1% shooting from three. He came in and knocked down shots. He provided a little bit of electricity coming off the bench there as a great role player for Virginia Tech. And could he have done that again? Sure. He could have gone to another high major school and do that, but why not drop down a level and go be the man? Northern Arizona, of course, last year they weren't, I think they won 6 games. They had a losing record and all that type of stuff. So I'm not entirely sure the connection as to what got him out there, but just again, purely from the outside looking in at it, dropping down a level, going to a location where you can go and there's no question about you starting and you being one of the top 1 or 2 players on the roster. There's no questions asked about that. So that's I think it's a great fit, a great match, a great decision from Jalen. And I have no idea. Jalen has this infectious alpha type of personality that he will go on the floor. He will be loved by the fans. He'll be loved by the coaches, and he will leave it all out there on the court too. So I'm very excited to see what this brings. In high school, I think he led the state in scoring 30+ points per game his junior year. As we remember, he graduated early, left high school after his junior year of high school to go to Virginia Tech, which was freshman year. So this right here should have been his true freshman year that he just had. So with the COVID and everything, he will have 3 seasons left to go because he will get to replay his sophomore year. So it'll be like a sophomore, junior, senior year out in Northern Arizona. He should be eligible to play immediately as well with the COVID stuff and everything. So I'm very excited to see what Jalen Cone does. Again, he's a kid that I pull for. He's a kid that I have a relationship with that I've known since middle school. Know the family and all that type of stuff too. So kudos to him. A lot of people questioning the move or whatnot. I don't know the inner workings of it again, but strictly from the outside looking in, it makes a ton of sense as to why he would do that, why he would go and drop a level. and play that out. I'm excited to see what happens with it as well. I will be tuned in to some Northern Arizona games now, whereas previously I probably wouldn't have. But moving on, Baylor Gonzaga. Gonzaga was coming into this game with people talking about them possibly being the best team in the history of college basketball. And I think that was pretty universal. I don't think that necessarily many people were saying that Gonzaga wasn't. Now, this weekend showed a little bit of difference, especially in the Baylor game, but also in the UCLA game. Baylor went through and they handled their business against Houston. And then they come in and they handle their business against Gonzaga. A lot of people are sitting there saying, if Gonzaga was supposed to be the best team in the history, does that make Baylor the best team in the history now that they beat them? Probably not. But the thing with that is the COVID pause that they had. I think they had a 20-whatever-day COVID pause early in the year, 19, 21 days. I can't remember which one it was, toward the end of January, where they came back off, stumbled a couple games. And I believe that goes to show how real this COVID pause was. Coming off of it, this Baylor team was head and shoulders better than this Gonzaga team. Had they not gone into that COVID pause, could they have been undefeated? Possibly. Then we're talking about this Baylor team as doing that. And there's so many storylines coming from this game. I mean, the first one starts with Scott Drew coming in 18 years ago into the situation. Now, I'm not entirely sure how many of you guys realize the situation of what it was at Baylor, but when Scott Drew came on, they had a player on the team murder another player on the team, and then that was covered up by the current head coach. About as bad of a situation as you could possibly have. And that's what they were coming off of, the sanctions and all that type of stuff that they had. Scott Drew was the next guy to come on and be the head coach. And as a 32-year-old head coach in that situation, coming off of that, unbelievable scenario. I mean, it's kind of one of those things, thinking back on it, a player on the team murdered another player and the head coach tried to cover it up. It's just unfathomable type stuff. And then, people are talking about them getting, blacklisted and blackballed out of the game and all this type of the death penalty and all that type of stuff. Well, they didn't. They had a ton of sanctions and all that and broke down the program and everything. But Scott Drew came on 18 years ago under those dire circumstances. And here comes 18 years later, him winning the national championship. Unbelievable in dominating fashion. And then also, too, you look at what he said in that press conference. These last couple of days, his introductory press conference has been reviewed and run and all that type of stuff. It says that that he's going to win a national championship under those type of circumstances. That he is going to win a national championship. So that's totally awesome. He was able to do that, and especially in the dominating fashion that he did. I believe that there's no doubt about it. Anybody who watched this game, that Baylor was far more athletic than what Gonzaga was. That Baylor was far stronger than what Gonzaga was. They were bigger and they were lengthier. Just everything about it. They came out, and I believe it was 11-1, 12-1 lead right off the rip. And then all of a sudden I looked at my wife. I was like, this game's over. I was watching it with my wife and daughter, made some burgers and hot dogs and all that type of stuff. And we watched it all together. I looked at her at that point in time and was like, this game's done. This Baylor team is that much better than Gonzaga. And at no point in the game did it ever look like Gonzaga was able to figure it out, because they couldn't guard Baylor off the ball. The rotations, the passing that Baylor was doing and everything, but also too, like a guy like Mark Vital, who totally bought into his role. Unbelievable rebound. I believe he had 8 offensive rebounds himself in the game. I mean, you sit here and look at these stats. Baylor had 38 rebounds to Gonzaga's 22. 16 of those 38 rebounds were offensive rebounds. Baylor took 67 shots in the game. Gonzaga took 49. And Baylor had 16 offensive rebounds and turned Gonzaga over 14 times. I mean, that's just a recipe for success. And then all of a sudden you add in the fact that they were 10 of 23 from three. They were as a team, a 41% three-point team coming in. They ended up shooting 10 of 23 from three in this game here. Just the numbers, look at the eye test. You look at the game, you saw Baylor was clearly the better team. That Gonzaga wasn't in the realm of what Baylor was on either end of the floor. I mean, you had something that you thought was Mark Few was confused. He didn't know what to do. They panned over to him, and he was sitting there just scratching his, like, he didn't know what to do on the sideline. They even went to a zone. Gonzaga did to try to slow Baylor down, and it did for a little bit. Baylor turned it over a couple times, then a quick timeout from Scott Drew, and then they started putting players in the middle of the zone, and they rung off 8 straight more points there, went back up to a 16-point lead, and you all know how it ended. That was as dominant of a performance as one of those things as to where you look at what it was just as dominant of a performance as you could have had. And then we see what we had on Saturday evening with the Jalen Suggs game, with the UCLA Gonzaga game, one of the greatest games in the history. You're sitting there getting juiced up about this Monday night game. You're sitting there getting juiced up. Number 1 versus number 2. Only the 4th time in the history of basketball is the preseason number 1 team playing against the preseason number 2 team in the finals. It was the game that we all wanted. It was supposed to happen back earlier in the year. That game got canceled. And man, I bet Gonzaga wishes they had that game because while they probably would have gotten, molly-whopped like they did in this one, they probably would have been more prepared possibly coming into this game, understanding as to what it is that Baylor just really brings to the table. Because that's one of those things that you don't realize how well they shoot it. You don't realize how athletic they are. You don't realize that suffocating defense until you play against it, because you can't really mimic it. And then all of a sudden looking at Baylor's lack of depth, whenever Jalen Suggs went out with foul trouble in the first half, you had Anton Watson came in, and man, did Baylor just go right at him. I mean, bless that kid's heart. He had no chance. I mean, they bought that matchup, and they just went right at him the whole time. And it was just in every facet, unbelievable game. Now, looking at what this game does, this is the lasting memory for these players that they have going into the NBA draft coming up. And there were some NBA guys kind of on the floor. We'll start off with the Gonzaga. Obviously, Jalen Suggs. People were talking about him being the number 1 pick coming out of this game or coming into this game. He had 22 points. He was kind of the only player really on Gonzaga that looked like they belonged really on the floor in that game. I don't think he did much to hurt his stock. He's still probably going to be a top 3 to 5 pick. I don't know necessarily that he has done enough to surpass what Cade Cunningham built and everything. Everybody's kind of falling back on the Cunningham thing. Also, Jalen Green's going to have some good tape to fall back on. From the Ignite League and everything as he progressively got better as it went on. I don't think Evan Mobley's necessarily there because I don't know. I just have a really hard time going for a big that high, number 1 in the draft, unless it's a game-changing big. And Mobley kind of has some question marks there within his game to get to that. But, Suggs, I don't think really necessarily hurt his stock too much. I think he's still a top 3 to 5 pick in the upcoming draft. The one whose stock is plummeting, Corey Kissberg. Corey Kissberg had a bad weekend. He just had a bad weekend overall. That's going to be the lasting memory that these scouts have coming in. Corey Kissberg talked about as a lottery pick coming into the game. Probably still a first rounder, but it's going to be way on the bottom half of the first round. I mean, as you saw in this game against Baylor last night, going against NBA-type athletes, NBA-type length and all that type of stuff, he struggled putting it on the floor. He struggled getting his shot off. He struggled, coming around the screens, getting bumped, all that type of stuff too. So, dead-eye shooter, plays with some swagger, has some vision and all that type of stuff. He will probably still end up being a mid to back end of the first rounder. Definitely not a lottery pick. I think he played himself out of that. Drew Timme also, after putting a clinic on against Evan Mobley earlier, people were talking about him being a first-round draft pick and everything. Well, as much as he helped himself in the Evan Mobley matchup, man, I think he hurt himself in this Baylor matchup, just really showing his lack of athleticism. The length and athleticism and all that type of stuff kind of falling in the Hunter Dickinson conversation, falling in the Luka Garza conversation as to why those guys aren't being looked at as first-round draft picks and all that stuff. He got picked on in the pick and rolls. He showed that he couldn't guard laterally. Showed that he struggled finishing at the rim. Also, the difference also between Dickinson and Garza is that they're both 6'11", 7 foot. Timmy's closer, probably 6'8", 6'9", without the length and all that type of stuff too. He's a supremely skilled offensive player and everything, but don't be surprised if you see him come back to Gonzaga next year, which, this Gonzaga team next year I mean, they could be great. All signs point to Chet Holmgren coming. They've already got Hunter Salas in tow. They've got another bigs from out west that are coming back. You know, they have Julian Strawther still on the roster. We'll see what happens with Walker Kessler as well. There's a chance that they could get the number one transfer guy and the number one high school prep guy, both coming in, both, 7-foot bigs that could probably play beside each other as well. So this Gonzaga team, they're definitely on the rise. They're on the climb. 31-1 season this year. They ended it on a terrible note, probably the worst possible note. I think as people are going to forget that just 2 days ago, we were talking about this possibly being the best team in the history of college basketball. Now everybody's saying, oh, well, yeah, I told you so. I think also too, that this game showed their lack of depth. Anton Watson came in whenever Suggs went out, and Baylor just went right at him. But furthering on the draft stuff, going over to the Baylor side of things, I'm not sure anybody used this NCAA tournament more to help their bank account than what Devon Mitchell did. He went from a borderline first, second rounder to a lottery pick to a probable top 10 guy. He showcased his ability to create. He showcased his ability to be a tough on-ball defender. He showcased his ability to make shots. I think he shot mid-40s from three this season, 45-ish possibly, 44, 45 from three this season. He showed that he can defend the opposition's best backcourt option, and he showed he can play on the ball a little bit as well. In the recent years in the NBA, you have the guys like the Marcus Smarts, the Pat Beverleys, those guys that are a little bit undersized positionally, but really, really over-the-top tough, really rugged on-the-ball defenders. Avery Bradley's another one. Now that Devon Mitchell shows that he can knock down some shots too, that just puts a whole lot more value also in what he is. So he's a definite lottery pick, possible, probable top 10 guy too, coming off of what he did in this NCAA tournament. Then you have Jared Butler. Jared Butler is Mr. Steady. He kind of is and did what we thought he would and do this entire tournament. He's able to create. He's got a really crafty handle. He's able to really shoot the ball. He's able to defend, quick hands and feet there as well. He's probably one of those guys. He's hovering right there on the first, second round bubble after this NCAA tournament, 22 points in last night's game, 4 of 9 from 3. He averaged 17 points, 2 steals per game with almost 5 assists. He might have played his way into a surefire first round type of situation, especially given the fact 22 points in the national championship game, the winning pedigree. Those teams that pick lower in the round, obviously, they're winning teams. They want to add in to their culture, to their locker room guys who can play, but also to add to the culture and all that type of stuff as well. But he's definitely going to hover right there. That first, second round draft, he might slid his way into the 20s and on the NBA draft boards as well, doing exactly what we thought he would. But thank you guys very much for tuning in here. ABC Live. I'm going to try to start this up more often. I'm going to try to start bringing a whole lot more topics and all that type of stuff too. Maybe trying to do 2 times a week throughout this AAU season and stuff. Please make sure that you hit in the comments. I want to hear from you in the comments. What topics you want to hear me cover? What topics you want to hear me talk about? If you have any questions, if you're on right now, if you have any questions, please shoot them out to me. I'll do my best to get to them, do my best to answer them. But leave in the comments below future topics that you want to hear me go through and everything. We're trying to make it about 30 minutes every episode as well. Make sure, please, that you go listen to my podcast, Absolute Basketball with Jamie Shaw. You can get it on Spotify, Anchor, iTunes, whatever it is. Go listen to it, subscribe to it, like it, all that stuff. And also, too, if you haven't yet, please subscribe to this channel as well. This is where I'll be doing a lot of the YouTube lives, but I'll also be bringing a ton of mixtapes. This past week, or the past few weeks, I've had, Paolo Banchero mixtapes, Brandon Huntley Hatfield mixes, some local guys from North Carolina coming through, Rowan Brumbaugh, who's going to be a blow-up player, BJ Edwards from Tennessee, and all that type of stuff. So we got a question coming in here from Baca. What do recruiters look for in a player? That's a very open-ended type of question. So good questions are coming in. Baca 439. What do recruiters look for in a player? So we will look at, I think, competitive nature. For me, that's one thing that I really, obviously the size, the intangibles matter, the length, the athleticism and all that type of stuff. Do you check those boxes off as well? But I think the one thing that no matter how tall, how short, how athletic, unathletic, whatever the case may be, the one thing that people look for is competitiveness. Do you compete? Do you go out there? Do you leave it all on the floor? Does winning matter to you, or do you just kind of enjoy the perks of being good, all that type of stuff? Competitive nature, winning attitude. I think that's what most recruiters can say that they look for in players above most else. Also, secondarily to that, possibly even primarily, but at least secondarily, also in the same conversation of that, skill shooting. Can you read the game? Can you shoot the basketball? I think those two things most everybody looks for as well. Now, there are obviously other guys out there that cannot shoot the ball, but are supreme athletes that cannot shoot the ball. But they are rugged defenders. They can't read the game, but they're 7 foot and all that type of stuff. So there are anomalies on that side of things. I think competitive nature, everybody looks for. I think secondarily, skill, reading the game, shooting is a huge factor for a lot of people, within looking for in a player. Mean, MEIGN, mean Maine. Chances Hubert Davis can convince Walker Kessler to come back to UNC. I think that is a foregone situation. I think Walker Kessler is already out the door talking about, the Kentuckys and Gonzagas of the world with that. I think, obviously he's going to give it a phone call. He has a relationship with them as he coached them this entire last year. So the phone call is going to be had. From my understanding, though, it sounds like the Kessler thing is a foregone type of situation. But we'll see. I'm sure that he'll give it a chance. I don't think he'll waste too much time on it. If Kessler is heavily telling him no, I don't think he'll waste all that much time on it. But he'll, without question, give him a phone call and hear him out first. But thank you guys very much. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel if you don't already. Leave in the comment section below topics that you want to hear from, mixes that you want to see, all that type of stuff. We want to hear that from you. But in the meantime, check me out on Twitter at JamieShaw5. Check me out on Instagram at Jamie_Shaw5. Go ahead and like and follow. Do all that type of stuff there. Subscribe here. Subscribe to the podcast. Rate it. Review it. Like it. All that type of stuff too. But until next time, guys, thank you very much. I am Jamie Shaw of Absolute Basketball Company.